for some funny reason, as a child, I didn't feel loved. I don't know why. Now, one, I wasn't the first, I wasn't the only boy, and I wasn't the last child. So in my mind, I fit nowhere, right? And I've spoken to quite a number of middle children who have had a displaced ideology of who they are. And so they keep wanting to try to prove their worthiness by overacting, right? And so as a child, that's how I was. Now, I'll share 4 major roles that children play. And the reason why they play this role, first thing is because every human being was created for connection. So the first time you come out, first of all, you're in your mother's womb for 9 months. You're in a hotel. You are eating when you want, drinking when you want. You are cool. And then all of a sudden, they bring you out into this world. You are not, the first few months, you still feel that connection with your mother because you're tied to her, right? But you find out that, you're on your own. And for you to get the connection from your mother again, you're looking at her face. And so they call it the mirror effect. Now, when you move out of that infant stage, you go into a stage, the toddler stage, which is now you trying to create autonomy, which is, no, that's when the child starts to say no. But in Nigeria, we beat the child for saying no. Meanwhile, it's a phase of development that child needs to have to be able to feel like they have their space and they can create the things that they want. Now, what we then find out, or what we found out, is that children, so I'll say predominantly 4 roles. When a child sees that every time they come back from school with good grades and their parents are all up in their faces and praising them and buying them gifts, the child assumes that all I need to do is have good grades to get my parents' attention. So they focus on being the first and the best. So they call them star children, but it's a role they're playing for your affection. So those kind of children actually grow up being almost workaholics. They want to always be the first. If they're not the first, then they feel like a failure. Some of them even go on all kinds of addictions because they need to keep going. Because as a child, that's how they got affection. So now when everybody says, you are doing so well, you got A, today you are the best, they're praising you, you then feel worthy, right? That's the downside of it as an adult. The second role is the sickly child. Every time you're sick, daddy that didn't have time for you now has time for you. Mommy that is always in the marketplace. Now, so you now have a special cream. Don't touch that cream, it's for Adiola, right? So it makes you feel special. Now you grow up and you find out that you still continue that sickly role because now the touch from the doctor and the nurse now feels that need. So you're constantly in the hospital. You're constantly with one problem or the other physically because that's how you got your connection as a child. The third major role is the carer child. Mommy, are you okay? Daddy, are you okay? Is everybody okay? What's left for me? Nothing. And so you grow up giving everything of yourself. You're a people pleaser. She's shaking her head. She's probably in that space, Because as people are listening, they'll find themselves in one of these places. And so you do everything for everybody because everybody now starts to tell you, one baby. You see Nedu, he's such a lovely child. He cares about everybody. And then you start to feel like, okay, I need to care for people to fill that void that I have. And the 4 predominant role is the rebellious child. Daddy says, go left, you are going right. I was that child. Because I was not brilliant. I didn't think that I could do anything well in school. I hated school. But I realized that every time I was naughty, my father, who was busy, then had time for me. Every time I stole something I was then looked at. Now, as a child, you don't know that beating is also not good attention. Any attention is attention for you, whether they're beating you. And as yellow as I am, I'm even surprised I don't have marks. They beat the living daylight out of me as a child because that was the only thing, or that was the only maybe tool or skill my father felt, because my mom didn't really beat me much, but my dad did. And he felt like that was the only way to break me. Unfortunately, he was toughening me because the moment I realized that marks don't stay on my skin, if I oil my body for 1 week, they dissolve. That was the end. I stopped being, you can beat me I became the beating, people were using me to boast in my house. Your father doesn't know how to beat if I beat you. That was the boasting. That's how they used to boast over me. So my dad would say, I'm going to take you to your uncle's house. My auntie one day, she removed one of these cables, these big black cables, and she was beating me. And I looked up at her, I said, Auntie, this beating that you're beating me, your body will pain you. And I will not help you massage it. So of course, they now added titles, Aje, Osho, Emere, and then I'm yellow, right? So I had all the titles. Of course, your body is going to pain you. You use all your muscle to beat a child. Of course, your body is going to hurt you the following day. Of course, it did hurt her the following day. And then, what so my uncle had said, your auntie doesn't know how to beat. If I beat you, you too. And he beat me once, so I never touched me again because I just gave him myself. And I put my face down in my hand and I just left in fact, he was beating 3 of us that day. The other ones were flat. I'm like, is it no cane? In fact, let me even bust your bubble. There was a time they punished my entire school. They were beating us only 4 strokes of the cane. Girls were running up and down. I say 4 strokes. 4 strokes. I was the only one that came out to collect that cane that day. Because I came out, I said, please, sir, can you beat me by 4 strokes so that I can go? Because cane meant it was nothing. That was my daily, it was like food, the food that I ate. So at a point, the marks were on my hand, I think maybe for 2 weeks, but after that, that was the kind of child that I was. But with hindsight and with knowing what I know now, that was also a huge cry for help. But my parents probably also didn't know better. They were treated like that by their parents. So trauma is in circles, right? And it's in patterns. So they probably didn't have the opportunity of being children as well. So how could they have given me a better experience? And it's not to say that I feel bad for anything. I mean, they did what they knew how to do. So I forgive them for it. But now that there's better information, what are we going to do differently? So as I was growing up, I realized that being rebellious wasn't working anymore because it's omo emakpare. So I changed my role, which means this child don't kill yourself. And so I became now a carer because I realized that every time I was there for people, people would tell me how great I was. I lived for those words because because I was very rebellious, everybody said, a lot of people around me said I was the black sheep of the family. I would amount to nothing. I would be nobody, so I didn't even want to try to even prove them wrong. Do you understand what I mean? I just barely was If you asked me up until when I even got into university, what I wanted to study or who I wanted to be, I didn't know. I first of all started doing computer science. Then I went back home after a first term. I said, Daddy, do you want me to spend 4 years or 8 years in school? He said 4 years. I said, then I need to change my course. He said, so to what? I said, I don't know. Let me go and do research and come back. So I wrote down mass comm, I wrote down English, and I wrote down theater arts. I did research in mass comm. I'll read too many books, cancel. English, too many books, cancel. Theater arts, clapping and dancing. I mean, how hard can that be? So I went back to meet my father. I said, Daddy, it's theater arts I want to do. And both my parents are in the arts. That's the worst. But my father looked at me and said, nope. That you have never shown any interest in the arts. And he was right, because I hadn't. But I didn't know who I wanted to be or what I wanted to do because they told me so many times I'll be nothing. So why do I even want to try and be anything than, why do I want to prove them right or prove them wrong? Right? So the words that we speak to our children also really matter. And then I was also very skinny as a child. And it was like a big deal. People used to, and because I hated certain kinds of food. Now, why can't you just give your child the food that your child can eat? Why must you force them to eat what you say because you are their mother and their father and you must control them for the rest of their life for them to eat what you must? And so that's how, so at a point I'll say, okay, don't worry, I won't eat my food. So they'll say, okay, if you don't eat it for breakfast, you eat it for lunch. I don't know if they did it to you, right? They did it to me. So if you don't eat, so at a point I used to eat with my nose closed. Then I'll throw the food down my throat and then just pour water down because I won't even taste it. It was either one auntie sitting down with a bastic showing me that they are bigger and better than me. Somebody threatening me that they will tie my ear to a fan and spin the fan, So even imagining all those things. And it's, once again, I'm not even saying that they're wicked. It's also what they knew, right? Because I'm sure they did it to them. I heard of so many other things that happened to so many people. And so it becomes a vicious circle. Hurt people, guys. And so because you're hurt, you're going to hurt. You can't give what you don't have. So when I became now this people pleaser, I wanted to be everything for everybody, but nothing for myself, right? I wanted people to keep telling me, validating me, applauding me, telling me that, you're doing well, you're doing a good job. See, you're breathing.
No, it's just
That constant need to be admired. That's what narcissism actually is. People have called it all kinds of things, but it's the constant need to be admired. And it came from the fact that I didn't feel I was admired at all as a child. I didn't feel loved as a child. I felt like they treated me a bit differently from the others. People would lie. Nobody would ask me if what they're telling was the truth or not. And they would just accept it because they're adults. So there's so many things happening in my life at the time. I think also to a large extent, it's that people-pleasing part of me that made me even marry the person that I married. Because he was a widower with 2 children. And I just felt the need that I could save him too. Right? I no regret at all, however, but I'm just telling you that the subtle things that happen to you in your life as a child will follow you to adulthood, and you start to show up as that person without actually knowing where it came from.
Interesting. So